The biggest upset in round one of the 2026 Australian Open will be. This is where the subscribe button comes in. This is how you do it, Steve. I'm 10 episodes in now. I'm a professional YouTuber, and apparently that's what you're supposed to do. Welcome in, Steve.
Thank you. I didn't think that B could get any higher than last episode, but you've managed to prove me wrong in the first 30 seconds of the show. Thanks for having me. We are.
Should I be more of a YouTuber?
We're almost there. Now we're really almost there.
By the way, great overlay last time out. I want to give you a shout out and kudos. Looks great. Thank you.
I try.
I am David EJ Berger. He is Steve, Mr. Ace Previews himself. We are the All Surfers Show, and today we will be talking all things Australian Open. The main draw is out. Round one is on the horizon. Our last episode was called Not Long Now. This one is virtually here, I guess. And there's actually a couple tournaments still needing to wrap up, Steve. We are on Alejandro Davidovich Fokina title watch. Will he win a title in the next 48 hours, Steve? Yes or no?
Oh, look, I'm going to say yes. I think it would be a good story. I think it would be a great story. He looked really great against Double V yesterday. I thought, I feel like maybe we talked about this late last year, about that need for him to get that that pressure of winning his first title off his back. He came so close multiple times last year, and he needed to kind of start to play these tournaments a week before a Grand Slam where the draws were a little bit weaker, and he's looked really solid here. So this is probably as good a chance as he's had, and it's a great opportunity for him. Are you in the yes or the no camp?
I mean, it's a 50-50 shot here at being correct. I'm going to go no, though, Steve. I do think that tonight could be tricky with Ugo Humbert, although I think this is the most vulnerable the Frenchman has been in some time. So you could upend him, but yeah, I don't know, man. Let's see. I'm hopeful. It would be cool. It would be a cool way to start off the year with that wrapped up, just because it's like a story that I think gets overplayed, over talked about, and it'd be nice to just kind of put that to bed and get that off, get that monkey off his back.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's just bring up the draw and start talking. Let's just do that, Steve. That's how I'm feeling. I think that's what we should do. Let's start on the women's side. Let's do it because I have it right here. Let's go. We were just talking before I hit record, and I'm going to bring up the bottom half, actually. That is Iga Swiatek's part of the draw. See if I can tech lord this up.
Just while you're getting it up, I did hear Danielle Collins make the comment earlier today that of all the top seeds in terms of who might potentially be knocked out in the first two rounds, Danielle decided that Iga was the one that she thought would be knocked out in the first two rounds. Not sure if she had a full look at the draw, given who Iga's got through the first two rounds, but I would be pretty surprised to see her struggle here. Yes, you can say she did lose two matches at the United Cup, but they were some pretty competitive matches against some pretty top-level talent. But yeah, so you got the draw up here, but it makes for some really interesting viewing and reading, I think, the women's draw in particular.
Danielle Collins, first of all, breath of fresh air on that desk. Fabulous addition to the TC desk. And I'm in agreement with you. I don't know that I'm smelling an upset here with Iga. Now, of course, she'll lose automatically. But I think she's got a nice draw for being the 2 seed here, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at those first couple of rounds, I think that's a fairly reasonable assumption. I think looking at these players that she'll make her way through. Anna Kalinskaya obviously has a lot of potential. She's able to bring a level near her best. But yeah, I think when we look at it here, that's Iga's the name, but it's not going to be all that easy the pathway from the third round through to the quarterfinals when you look at some of the other names we've got here in this section of the draw.
Absolutely not. We have Osaka here in this part of the draw as well. Naomi Osaka, who I thought rebounded really nicely last year, and I think she's still out of the gate so far, but always a threat here on these Australian courts. And Ivelisse, I think her ceiling is yet to be defined. So some pretty exciting names in this portion of the draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Sorana Castella, in her final year, looking to make another run, potentially to the second week here of the Australian Open, but going to be pretty tough. As I said, Ivelisse has showed some really solid level. The one question mark I think with Eva is that, she pushed, Iga so close in the United Cup, but then looked like she maybe was struggling a little bit with that knee in the back end of that match. So I hope she's recovered there. But yeah, Osaka's the name you're drawn to. And for me as an Australian, it was great to see Madison Inglis make her way through qualifying, win the 3 rounds. And now we have an all-Aussie first round match with Kim Birrell, who was just knocked out in the semi-finals of Adelaide. So, a solid week for her there, but a great opportunity for one of those two to be able to make the second round and, put together a decent chunk of prize money and some ranking points.
I think knocked out undersold what just happened in that match. She was completely beat down. Let's keep moving up because we have a name we talked about last time out. We talked about Belinda Bencic, being a player who really shined at the United Cup, and now she draws Katie Boulter. We were saying you don't want to play Bencic round 1. Now I actually feel like she got a tricky opening round matchup here with Boulter, who can have a level on her day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Katie was lucky to get into the main draw. She was slated as the top seed, I think, of qualifying before a late withdrawal from the main draw meant that she didn't have to play the 3 matches. So big opportunity for her here against Bencic. But as you said, there's some interesting names here. Daria Kasatkina representing Australia for the first time at an Australian Open. But I think when you look at this section, your mind only goes back, just over a week to Elise Mertens versus Belinda Bencic from the United Cup. That match ended in a 3rd set tie break, so evenly placed between the two of them. We might only be a week away from another really interesting matchup between this pair.
Let's keep moving here because Maya Joint is a name that I think a lot of people could get to know over this fortnight. I think she has a really nice path to make some waves. I think she has a lot of expectations on her back. And I think her draw provided a pathway to get her name out there in the general masses, from the island of Australia to the world. I really think she has a nice path here, Steve.
Look, the ideal result here, I think, as an Aussie, is a Joint versus Rybakina 3rd round here. But Valentova has been really tricky first round match. I think, Valentova, on what she's been able to produce, she was pretty competitive against Madison Keys this week, but her form in the back end of 2025 was really impressive. The big question mark, I think, with Joint is, missed the first tie of the United Cup with illness, and it's just felt like she's been on the back foot the whole month in terms of what she's played. She lost, quite handily to Mira Andreeva in Adelaide, and my fear is, Valentova, she can't look past Valentova in round 1 here. I think the round 2 matchup for whoever wins out of Valentova and Joint I think they will continue through to at least the 3rd round. But looking at this overall, Rybakina has to like, I think, what she would see here. But just one more comment on Maya Joint. It's a funny one as an Australian. In terms of the coverage and everything, Maya Joint's just not really in the coverage a great deal. And that's because she hasn't, as fantastic as her 2025 season was, it all happened abroad. And there's a lot of the Australian tennis coverage. You're heavily reliant on kind of the performances that you can produce across January in terms of being able to set up that appeal and interest and and she was knocked out in the first round last year, potentially at risk of that happening again. I'd love to see her make a run here, but it is going to be a tricky start.
The organizers are certainly happy and don't need a Rybakina Maya joint third round matchup. Ticket sales are through the roof, but I think that that is what they would prefer to have come round 3, Steve. Let's keep moving to this next section. A couple Americans, a few Americans are popping up here. Amanda Anisimova obviously had 2 great slam runs last year. She's looking to make another one to kick off the 2026 season. And an unfortunate draw, I think, for 2 players in Sofia Kenin and Peyton Stearns. Both players, I think, would love, not that every player wouldn't love a nice slam run, but these 2 players in particular, Kenin, obviously a former champion who hasn't reached those heights since those days, and Peyton Stearns, a player who's looking to make waves on the tour. Man, I think an unlucky draw for both players in this first round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the focus here, particularly through these 8 players, is the 3 Americans. So, Kenin and Stearns both haven't probably produced that level that's, consistently and right at their best over the course of the last 12 months. They've both shown kind of flashes. But I think if you look at this section overall, Anisimova would be pretty thrilled, I think, with this section of the draw, you'd have to admit.
Yes, I think barring some poor performances, I think she should be into round 4. Let's keep going to someone who always grabs attention, and that is Ostapenko. She is on the bottom portion of this section of the draw. And, I feel like I don't know what I feel, actually, Steve, because she's always unpredictable, and it wouldn't shock me if she loses to any of these players, but it wouldn't shock me if she makes it through here pretty straightforward as well.
And look, that sentence you've put together there basically sums up why she is a draw card and an interest, because you don't know what you're going to get. You just have to look to Adelaide earlier this week. She's up 5-love, has some set points, I think, at 5-2, loses at 5-7 and retires hurt. It's the Ostapenko experience is what people come to enjoy. We could see her lose 2-6, 2-6 and then come out and win the women's doubles title across the course of the next fortnight. It's really hard to say, but I think when you do look at this portion of the draw, it does present like there is some opportunity here for players, Zhang Shuai or Taylor Preston. Preston's putting together a phenomenal week, and Hobart's played some really solid tennis to finish last year at the lower levels. Now she's in a semi-final in Hobart and is here as a wild card in the main draw. And, Noshkova is at the top of this list. She looked to be almost playing on one leg at times in Brisbane.
I think she retired,
right? She played through, I think, and then did she lose to Andreeva, I think, in 3 sets, I think it was. But there was the match, I think, against Freck, who, Noshkova saw the trainer at least 2, potentially 3 times and was basically swinging for the fences and got through with the win. But it's not the type of look or, that you'd be hoping coming into a long fortnight of tennis.
Opportunities abound in that portion of the bracket. Let's keep going. Some familiar names here. We have your reigning champion in Madison Keys. We have a former slam finalist at the U.S. Open and Leylah Fernandez. And we have
a few others below that too.
What's that?
A few others there with deep runs from the U.S. Open.
Sloane Stevens here as well.
Yep. Carolina Pliskova with her return. It's it's a bit of a nostalgia hit, this section. I think of those matches, obviously this is the first time Madison Keys is having to come back as a defending Grand Slam champion. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that shapes out, I think. We have seen in the past some players come back and struggle early against, some lower ranked players, just dealing with that pressure and expectation that comes with being, a Grand Slam defending champion. But look, I'm interested to see here the Chen versus Fernandez match. I think is going to be one of the matches of the women's round 1. So pretty keen to keep an eye on that one.
I think a pretty manageable draw for Keys to get deep once again. I think every match should be on her racket, and it'd be disappointing if she doesn't make round 4. Let's go to the next portion here. We have Jessica Pegula, Badosa. We got some name brands on the women's scene headlining. McCartney Kessler is also someone that I think is a tough out, Steve. I think Pegula obviously is the name you're drawn to in this section, but I do know that Paula Badosa is working towards, reaching a ceiling once again, and I have to think she has some opportunity here, at least in the first few rounds.
Yeah, I think the thing with Paula is that you hope to see her play a couple of matches and string together a bit of confidence and rhythm. I think with her style, she's done that before. She's gone deep here, at the Australian Open. She's gone, she's made it to second weeks of Slam, so more than capable. I think when you look at this, a Pegula Badosa third round seems like a pretty enticing matchup, I think, and one that you'd want to be there for. If you've got tickets to the Australian Open, you'd want that on your court, late in the first week. I think that shapes as an interesting one, and I think that's the thing with Pegula. There can be so much variety, I guess, in terms of her level, and sometimes she has lost early unexpectedly, but she has also become a little bit of a mainstay in terms of thinking about those players who make second weeks of Grand Slams. She pushed Sabalenka at the US Open last year, going deep. I think she'll be thereabouts again.
Man, Donna Vekic draws Mira Andreeva opening round. Popcorn match for round 1 for sure. I don't think either player is excited for that matchup. Maria Sakkari, she trended up a bit at the United Cup. Let's see what level she can produce. And I think this is obviously on Mira's racket, but wouldn't shock me if there was some upsets throughout this portion of the draw, Steve.
Yeah, and speaking of upsets, I'd have Diana Yastremska at the top there on upset alert in round 1 against Ruse there. I think that's a really interesting match. From an Australian perspective, Ilia Tomljanovic, I think, retired with that issue in Adelaide just a couple of days ago. Hopefully she's going to be right to be able to take her place in the main draw.
All right. Next section, Diana Schneider taking on Krejcikova. That's an interesting round 1 matchup for sure. Popcorn all the way. Svitolina is here off her title. I think she's playing with a lot of confidence. And I have to think if you're Svitolina, you're thinking you're coming out of round 3 here. But Krejcikova, if I feel like she's battling some fitness issues. So tough to really know what we're going to get from her, but don't want to count her out either.
Yeah, I think looking at this, it said that it has been foolish in the past to write off Krejcikova, and I think even some of the performances she put together at the US Open, I think she had Taylor Townsend and the whole crowd against her and saved a handful of match points on her way to winning that one. But I think if we see a level near Schneider's best, I think she's capable of challenging if they were to get there in a third round. But in terms of a player that is able to bring a consistent level somewhere near their best, I think Svitolina is the pick here to make a decent run.
Emma Navarro. I'm not sure what to make of her right now. And then we have Alex Eala here, folks. We have Alex Eala here, folks. Eala. We have where eyeballs are looking for what's going to drive our viewership. I'm just going to name this show the Alex Eala Draw Show now, Steve. To get the content up.
Interesting matchup with Alicia Parks too.
I agree. I do not think that is a walkover for her by any means. It's really going to be, it's just really going to be how Parks handles, the rallies, but certainly has a power edge.
Yeah, and look, you can probably say this about a lot of matches, but it's ultimately going to come down, I think, to Parks's winners to unforced errors ratio. I think that's going to be a massive part there. We can see, you just have to look through the last 18 months of Parks's form, and there is some very, very strong results in there, but there's also been some results that do kind of leave you scratching your head a little bit. So Iala will need to be on her game. We saw her in Auckland, perhaps struggling with an injury late in that loss. So it'd be interesting to see it. Another one that we, hope to see back at full fitness out there at Melbourne Park.
I don't want to call this a prove it week for Emma Navarro, but I do think that if she does not produce some decent results, I think some question marks will abound her season moving forward. Obviously, she has Charleston to which I believe her family, and she has some home cooking there to maybe turn things around on the horizon. But I do not think if you're Navarro, you want to have a poor week here, and I worry she might, Steve. I really do worry she might.
Yeah, I think currently on the Billionaire Family Power Ranking, she's second. So it's going to, but again, she's shown real capability at times. She beat Iga late last year. She has shown that she can turn it on and find a level. It's just when you don't see it every tournament, it just makes you wonder when it's going to pop up next. So I'd love to see it, and it'd be a good time to do it. Interesting little pocket there as well with Mahove as well.
I talked about Iga Swiatek enjoying the names in her portion as the 2 seed. I think Coco Gauff obviously has a lot of respect for every woman she takes to court with, but if you're Gauff, you're looking at this section and you're thinking, you know what, I can't rest on my laurels, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yep, particularly with Vondrousova struggling with injury and pulling out in Adelaide. So I think that does really open up a decent chance here. Rakimova, interesting player in terms of ceiling and capability. She was one of the players who played deep into last season to make her way into the Australian Open main draw. I think came up clutch late with a couple of tight wins to just get her ranking inside the cutoff line. But yeah, you look at this and I think Coco is the one that you'd assume is heading through this section.
Steve, I don't want to be ageist, but there is a player in this portion of the draw that is older than me somehow, which is not hard to achieve, but as a professional athlete, it actually is maybe hard to achieve. All right, Jasmine Paolini, and we have another young phenom in Jovic here, the American. This, I think, could be a really fun section because as much as Paolini has accomplished over the last couple seasons, I do feel like she's kind of susceptible at times. And I think this is this could be a really fun portion of the draw with a surprise round 4 name moving on.
Yeah, and look, I might even throw Paolini into the upset alert round 1.
Yeah,
I think thinking back to what the question that Danielle Collins was asked in terms of the top seeds, I think Sasnovich is a really tricky first round opponent. She put together some really good tennis at the end of last year. I think beat Naomi Osaka. She's made her way through qualifying here. Put together some solid performances in Brisbane. I think it was the week before. I think she's a really tough out for Paolini. So I think that's one to really keep an eye on. And as an Aussie, I was really pleased to see Priscilla Hon put together some really good tennis in the back end of last year, made a little run at the US Open, struggled with a foot issue and needed to finish her season early, but it was great to see her get a wild card here and come into the main draw.
You have to love the level you're seeing from Marta Kostyuk coming into this slam. She gets, I think, a pretty manageable pathway in some respects. But we shall see. What do you think about this portion, Steve?
I think, Marta should be on form and obviously, beating Putintseva in Brisbane as well. I think she should be at least into the third round. I think the third round, if it's an Alexandrova Kostyuk matchup. I think that's going to be another really good, really interesting matchup for us to see. I think Alexandrova, again, falls under that category of, she's a player that can beat pretty much anyone on tour on her day. It's just about how long she can maintain that level that's near her best. So she's one to maybe keep an eye on. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting little patch, as is this one that you've now got on the screen.
Oh yeah, this one I think is really fun because I know you're a Katie McNally guy, and obviously we just seen Mbuko play a little bit ago, and she's looking fantastic. Clara Tauson, I think, had a really great 2025. I think she's looking for more in 2026. This is going to be a competitive section of the draw.
Yeah, I think the Canadian against Emerson Jones, I think, is going to be a really great match. I think in terms of looking ahead for the next decade. I think on tour as well. I think it's not going to be the last time these two play. But yeah, I think there's certainly opportunity in this space. With Clara Tauson struggling a little bit with form and fitness, I think there's a great opportunity for the names there in that section.
All right, we are at the top here with, man, if you're Emma Raducanu, you played your way into a seed. That's great. Unfortunately, you're going to play Aryna Sabalenka in round 3 if you make it there.
and that is a big asterisk of if you make it there.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. Like normally, I don't know. Maybe it's when you've followed tennis for as long as we have, you sit there and you look at draws and you can kind of get a bit. You kind of go, oh, Sabalenka first kind of couple of rounds. Kind of go, okay, well, Sabalenka will make her way through. There's some interesting names there in terms of the potential on their day to be able to challenge. Raducanu did challenge Sabalenka. Was it at Wimbledon last year? And I think maybe one of the US hardcourt was very, very competitive against Sabalenka. But again, the big question mark is, does she get there? Does she win the ones that she's meant to? Another one who's made some interesting runs at Grand Slam level, but hasn't played as much lately, is Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, who might be facing Sabalenka in the second round. So a couple of interesting little spots there. Anastasia Potapova, representing Austria now. Another one who is very, very capable of causing some challenges. But I think what we would like to see is Sabalenka Raducanu as round 3. And I think now that we've spoken through the draw, there's a lot of potential round 3 matches that everyone would love to see.
I think the round 3 is going to be really strong on the women's side. I think plenty of opportunity for upsets, and I think that also plenty of opportunity for fan faves to be deep into this tournament on the brink of week 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to the men's portion now, Steve. And let's start at the top, because why do they got to do this to your boy, Adam Walton? And I say your boy because he's from your country. But, man, can't think of a worst matchup for Adam Walton than Carlitos Alcaraz. Now, I know you can say that about a lot of players, pretty much every player but one other player. His name's Jannik Sinner. But in particular, this is not a great matchup for Adam Walton. And if you're Carlitos Alcaraz, you're loving this round 1 matchup. You should get off the court fairly quickly. No disrespect to Adam Walton, who I actually have a lot of respect for. I think is an underrated player. But I just and also Walton's form has not been there since the summer. I think a delicious round 1 matchup for Alcaraz to feast, quite frankly.
Yeah, and when you look at players like Alcaraz and Sinner who don't play any real lead-up tournaments, they'll go play exhibitions and everything, you do then kind of wonder how, battle-hardened and match-fit they are when you come to the Australian Open, in the back end of January. And then you look at draws like this and you sit there and go, well, this is Alcaraz's warm-up, this section, isn't it? What are we suggesting out of this that, over best of 5, he could, I think he's if you match him up against each one of those players, outside of you can maybe make a case Seb Korda as the dangerous kind of unseeded floater, but he's going to be pretty overwhelming as a favorite against anyone in that patch, particularly with Mutet struggling with injury coming in.
Corentin Moutet is the bottom seed in this portion of the draw that Alcaraz would face if the seeds went out in round 3. And I don't know if you've ever watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Steve, but Moutet is what I would call the wild card. But I still don't think he poses any sort of challenge to Alcaraz. And man, none of these guys really do. The Hoffman Spida match, I think, could be really interesting just because one guy's just a true power service game oriented player versus a baseline grinder in Zach Spida, who has no service game. So that should be a contrast in styles. And then obviously Michael Zhang has made waves on the college scene for a few years now. He played his way into the main draw, 3 really tough matches to get in here. Now he take on Sebastian Korda, who is always beatable. I mean, you were talking about Aussies playing in Australia, and Kokonakis just laid his life down to get that win against Korda last week. And so much so, he is now out of the singles draw at the AO. He is playing doubles, but man, that was a match I feel like Korda should have won that he did not. And that could easily be said about this matchup here versus Zhang.
Yeah, and look, also, it wouldn't entirely shock me if we were, if he did make the 3rd round and then push Carlos Alcaraz. There is such a big divide in terms of that level. As you said, Kokonakis, his shoulder is somehow still attached, his arm still attached to the rest of his body. It's been a lot of surgeries. You said there's other humans' body parts being inserted into the shoulder. He found a way to make it his life goal his 2026 goal to win that match and then retire. But then, you think back to Korda, he's played really well here in the past as well. Loves the big stage and can produce a pretty good level. So on that level of, potential 3rd rounds that we'd like to see, I would love to see Korda versus Alcaraz. And I think that's going to be one that I would be watching from the very first ball to the very last.
I think tennis-wise, that is the matchup we want to see, is Korda versus Alcaraz. I think train wreck sideshow-wise, it's Moutet Alcaraz.
Yeah.
A couple Americans playing each other here in Tommy Ball versus Alex Kovacevic. I think that could go 4, quite frankly. I know, I think it was maybe at the U.S. Open, Kovacevic pushed Tiafoe to 4 sets. Tommy Paul found some form this week. He's actually, I think, probably playing right now. I actually should look at that scoreline.
He's double break up 5-2 in the first set. At the time
okay, yeah. So he's found some form in Adelaide going into this week. So yeah, I fear for Kova there. I take it back. That could be a straight setter if Tommy's going to play well. Interesting matchup here with Tirante and Vukic. Tirante, I think, he can play up on a hard court, but traditionally a clay guy taking on a pure hard courter in Vukic, although Vukic does have a couple odd clay results. And then I think, on the men's side, NBK here, Bukov Kjar is a name that I think we're going to be talking about a lot more moving forward. Good opportunity here against Opelka. At least you know what you're going to get when you're playing Riley Opelka.
Yeah, I think they've tried to edge and show the stats around rally length and rallies over 9 shots. I don't know how many rallies over 9 shots we're going to get in that Opelka NBK match, but it should make for some interesting viewing. And then our man Davidovich Fokina as well at the bottom there. A pretty serviceable little pocket there, compared to some of the players he had to face early last year. I think he was, Felix Auger-Aliassime and Menchik, I think, on the way to Tommy Paul, who he might face here in the 3rd round, where his body had given up at that point in time. I think that was one of the more one-sided matches of the 2025 Australian Open. But good to see the Spaniard back in the seedings and in a relatively strong patch of form, because he is one of those players. I think when he's in full flight, he is one of the best to watch.
Fokina Stigami Solic in the opening round here is a guy who I think could be a 250 guy, and the reason he is not is because of his inefficiency on a hard court. So decent opening round draw here for Fokina. But he is Fokina. Who knows what he'll do. I assume he'll get through, though. And honestly, a good opportunity here for Riley Opelka, if you want my honest opinion. On these hard courts in Australia, his service game is really going to play up. He could serve his way through the qualifier here, serve his way through Fokina, and then he's into the third round. He just lost to Tommy Paul. But, I just think a chance for a lot of breakers, turning matches into coin flips, and no one that's like that amazing until probably Tommy Paul. All right, let's go to Bublik versus Brooksby. I've been thinking about this one because my initial takeaway was Bublik is going to absolutely wreck this guy. But I've been thinking about the fact that he's going to offer Brooksby pace. And maybe that is what Brooksby needs to succeed. He just got completely wrecked by Sebastian Baez in Auckland, and that was an embarrassing loss in my mind. And maybe that's because Baez just doesn't offer him the pace that he needs for counterpunching. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way that this shouldn't just be an absolute beatdown by Bublik.
Well, Baez did then go on to beat Ben Shelton in straight sets. So
true.
We had I think you did the YouTube short around Sebi being the player of the year for 2026. He's off to a strong start.
He hasn't lost yet.
But yeah, I think the thing with Brooksby, this is another one I think, might fly under the radar as being a potential upset alert for round one. You look at the players that have maybe troubled Bublik in the past. I think of Munar at Wimbledon. Players who can get the ball back a lot, don't necessarily give you a lot that you can do. They're not giving pace. In Brooksby's situation, he doesn't put a stack of spin on the ball. He doesn't, he doesn't play like a lot of other players. And I've seen, Brooksby play here before, and he's going to keep getting the ball back. If someone, if there's pace coming from the other end, he's going to make it a really awkward match. And I just don't know. I think it'll be a genuine test for Bublik in terms of his level and where he's at. That if he's, serious about being in that next tier below the top two guys, these are the matches that he needs to be winning in straight sets, not, being pushed to a 7-5 in the fifth set or losing like he did against Munar at Wimbledon, having served for the match in the fourth set. So I think there's, I still have some question marks around Grand Slam level and Bublik, which I hope will be answered with a strong performance here. But I think Brooksby is one maybe to watch. I don't want to discount him just off the Baez loss, given Baez is now basically the third best player in the world based on his recent form.
You mentioned that player type that gives Bublik at least it slams so far, because didn't he lose to Sumit Nagal here a couple years ago as well? He's got Brooksby and then Fucsovics and Karabahi next round. Both those players, same thing. So you might be onto something there. We'll see. I love what I've seen from Bublik, and I want to see him do well because I do feel like he has put in the work to have a nice slam run on top of all the things we've seen at 1,000 events and the 250 titles he's racked up. Flavio Cobolli, the Italian. He had a great Wimbledon run thanks to his draw. I think he's got a nice draw as well this time around. Yep. Ferry is, I think, could be a tricky opening rounder. It wouldn't shock me if this goes 4, even 5 sets. But a match I do think he should get through. And then, I would like him over Kecmanovic or Etcheverry, although Kecmanovic has made a run to round 4 here in Australia as well, but just haven't seen a lot from the Serbian, Steve. So question marks for me for both Etcheverry and Kecmanovic and what they'll do. But good opportunity for both those players, actually, as I feel like Either guy could win that one. Let's go to this section. Jason Kubler. You talked about Ingles. I believe, is this her fiance, Kubler?
Yep. Kubler and Inglis both made their way through qualifying yesterday. Both finished within about half an hour of each other as well. So they got engaged in December. We're both on the United Cup team together earlier this month, and now they've both had 3 wins through qualifying to make it to the main draw. So a big month in the Inglis Kubler household.
I think Kubler is very live versus Tiafoe. I just don't know what to think of Francis Tiafoe. He's saying all the right things on podcasts, and maybe we can get him on this show one day. But I want to see it before I believe it. And I think Jason Kubler, after struggling with injury for a long time, is finally making his way back to his 2023 level, in which he was a really prominent, I shouldn't say prominent, but a really competent hardcourt player on the men's main tour.
Yeah, it's we talked about Tiafoe a couple of episodes ago, and the comments that he made on Andy Roddick's podcast. He looked great against Vukic in Brisbane. Didn't look so great against Medvedev, but it seemed to be an interesting kind of tactical display there that didn't quite match, who he was playing. And I think Medvedev overall, Tiafoe wasn't the only one that Medvedev's made look silly over the last couple of tournaments. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a really fascinating match, particularly with obviously a pro-Australian crowd getting behind Kubler. My thoughts and questions to you is, if we scroll to the bottom of this section of 8.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
No, it's there. Matteo Berrettini and Alex de Minaur.
Oh, yeah. That's a headliner round 1 match, obviously, because Berrettini has played his way out of seeding. He's hasn't come all the way back in terms of his rank from injury. Hasn't played a ton to get back, and now it's a matchup that's provided opportunities for both players. Obviously, Berrettini won in Miami, but that was off a long match for de Minaur. The usual Iron Man falling to the Italian off a long match versus Fonseca the round before. So, best of 5. I think this is a classic matchup where if Berrettini's going to win, he's got to serve lights out for 3 straight sets, because if this tips 4 or 5 sets, he is not going to win.
Yeah, it's I feel like on paper it maybe looks like it might be a little bit closer than what it ends up being, just because we just haven't seen enough from Berrettini recently. For the year-round tennis lovers as well, Medjedovic versus Navoni is going to be, I think, a really interesting match over best of 5 as well.
Oh, think about Navoni pushing Jack Draper. This is not a carbon copy, because Draper obviously is just a much more established player, but you have a power guy who struggles in the heat here in Medjedovic. Man, Navoni, the slap and bray, drags this guy deep into the water. I do not think Navoni is totally dead in this matchup.
No, I think he's going to be one who, the longer that match goes, the more it's going to favor Navoni. And look, when you look at the weather for the first round, it's probably around 30 degrees Celsius across the first 3 days. So we're not quite on bulb watch for those who've been watching some of the other episodes, but they're going to be warm conditions. And I think we saw Medjedovic struggle a little bit over 5 sets against Altmaier at the US Open in a 5-setter there. I think it's going to be an interesting test to see where Medjedovic is at, and if he's been able to make some improvements physically over the off-season.
I think good opportunity for Patrick Kipson, who had a fine fall, won himself the wild card to get into this main draw without qualifying. Now he gets Francisco Comesaña, who is a guy who, became a main tour guy last year, but he is, a clay first guy. He can play on hard courts, and he has a motor. But of all the people you could draw, I think, this is a really nice test for Kipson to see what he can do in a slam round 1 matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the next section, shall we? number 3 seed at the top there, Alexander Zverev. That's a pretty tricky first round matchup we got there against Diallo.
It is, and I think I was watching I mentioned Daniel Collins. I was watching the TC Dusk earlier, and they pointed this match out. So I think that it is not flying under the radar like I thought it might be, because Diallo has not had a level worth talking about in some time. But he's pushed Fritz in the past. He's pushed Dimitrov. He's pushed these top 15, 20, top 10 players. So we'll see what we get if he can produce on the day versus Zverev, who will extend an olive branch, I'm sure, and not totally put this kid away.
Yeah. Zverev's found himself in some weird kind of struggles early in Australian Opens in the past. I think, when you look at Diallo, you look at what he's capable of doing. He's shown flashes. I think was it on one of the US hard courts. I think he had a set point against Jannik Sinner, one of the lead ups to the US Open. Like, he's shown some kind of patches of form potentially. But yeah, it's if you zoom out and look at the large kind of body and you think about how good Zverev kind of looks over best of 5 generally compared to best of 3, I think this is probably going to be a tough pocket. I think for the rest of the names there, outside of maybe if we can get a vintage Cam Norrie performance.
Man, Emilio Nava gets Jacques. That's not a fun proposition.
Particularly with Nava coming off some injury struggles, I think as well in Auckland, was a set and 5-all against Byers, who's now gone on to much bigger and better things this week. But it was a missed opportunity for Nava. Struggling, I think it was with a hip issue. So hopefully he's right to take his place here as well.
Popperin and Mueller in the bad form bowl. Let's see who wins that one. I think this is. I mean, what to make of Cam Norrie? I don't know what to think of him. I think he could lose to Ben Bonzi. I think he could beat Ben Bonzi. We'll see what happens there. Let's keep moving though. Classics. Francisco Cerundolo match earlier this week in which he won the first set and still lost the match. I think he did that repeatedly last year. Opens 2026, more of the same. Tingyong Zhangji Zhen, who I thought looked like he was back during the United Cup, at least in terms of playing some competitive tennis once again. Man, that is a match with a wide range of outcomes, I feel, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can make a case about all the matches in this section kind of falling.
Oh yeah.
Ultimately, I think if you look at this as like, if we see a level, I thought there was a bit of promise in how we saw Andrei Rublev start the year in Hong Kong. I know he did end up losing to Mazzetti in that semi-final, but I felt like there were signs. Arnoldi's a first round opponent. Capel has caused upsets at Grand Slam level before. But yeah, I'm really, really interested to see how Andrei Rublev fares this tournament and how he looks overall.
I think a pretty solid opportunity if you're Artur Cazaux here. I like Jean Faria. In fact, I'm a fan, but I think on a hard court versus Cazaux, I'm not sure I think this is a guy that Cazaux should beat, number one. That's just off the top.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Faria could beat Cazaux, of course. I'm not saying that he's drawing dead by any means, because I do like him as a player and I like his upside, even on a hard court. But I think if you're Artur Cazaux, you're looking at, you got Faria, you got to down Arnaldi, you got to down Rublev, and then you look at who's above you. Damir Zhumer, Draxel, Zhangji Zhen, who's just coming back, and he's super volatile. Dolo is like lost in the woods. Who knows what's going on? I think there's plenty of opportunity here for the Frenchman.
Yeah, I think that's the thing of there's a lot of that section there. There is a lot of potential there, and it's about realizing that potential. So it's going to be interesting, I think, as we kind of work through our shows during the tournament as well, as to how these players are faring and stacking up.
Daniil Medvedev has looked great so far, Steve.
Yep.
And now he's going to take a guy who's going to who's gonna love playing a lot of balls with him. So I feel like this is one of those we talked about this on our MP9 show earlier. Like the key to Daniil Medvedev and a long Australian Open run, at least threatening to maybe potentially win this thing as an outside the top two, is not a lot of court time, not a lot of shenanigans, because that seems to be a pretty historically relevant statistic here for Medvedev over time with the Australian Open, in which he plays a lot of long matches and then it catches up with him in the end. I think of the guys in his portion of the draw, this opening round match offers that opportunity the most, because De Jong will backboard it all day here.
Yeah. A couple of really interesting. I think Tabilo is going to be an interesting kind of look, but I think if you look at Medvedev and you look at what he was able to produce in Brisbane, I think if he brings a little somewhere near that, he is going to be very hard to beat over best of 5 sets, I think. And that's just not for this section. I think that's for the rest of the players in that quarter as well.
For sure. I think that I'll tell you what, there's not a lot, or I don't really want to, not to bring betting into this, but not someone I'm wanting to attack Medvedev with at this point in time, quite frankly. Between Marichon, Rinderknech, Myshak, Friendly, Halys has looked pretty good. I want to give him a shout out because he's had a great start to the season. But no, he's not going to beat Medvedev. Interesting round one matchup here with Leonard Tien taking on Marcos Giron. Giron, the talk of the town. Another good week this week. Although you can poke holes in what he's done so far, Steve. I'm not going to do it right here. I'm going to turn a blind eye to those holes. But nice opportunity to take on a player, Leonard Tien, who is overvalued in the market. And I thought looked pretty poor against Mickelson in his only match in Australia so far. But I think that was some fatigue catching up to him off the next gen title run. So I think some R&R probably did him some good. He needs to get his first serve short up. But the issue is Giron is just so air prone that I don't know how he survives RTN, quite frankly.
It could, that has the makings of a long match. I feel like it is one of the more interesting first round matchups, and I think it is certainly most interesting of this little pocket of the draw. I wouldn't be shocked if we got to the end of this or when we were recapping the day after that match and they've gone 4+ hours. They could genuinely kind of head down that path, I think.
Where are we at with Jordan Thompson, Steve? Is he healthy, unhealthy? Give me an update. You're on the streets of Australia. Tell me what's up.
So he didn't have the wild card until last week. So he was playing in New Caledonia. I think made the quarters there. The challenger level has now made his way back. Obviously, he's got the wild card. He didn't have to go through qualifying, but it means he hasn't been in any of the draws this week. It's an opportunity for him to try and get his way back into the top 100. I think we've seen his best over the last 2 years in particular. He's been pretty competitive and he's played some really great tennis across, particularly through hard and grass court. This is, if there is any question marks physically, I think we're probably going to find out. Round one match.
I think this round one match is a gift and a curse versus Mini Dolo. I think you're loving that you're not playing a hard court natural, but you're not liking playing someone who's going to want to make it physical.
Yep. And Felix, I think, we gave him a shout out towards the end of last year in terms of, how he's ended the season and, to come in here as the 7 seed didn't look likely kind of the middle of last year. But again, it feels like it's one of those kind of just a little first round tester there with Nuno.
I think that's a horrible round one matchup draw for Felix. Nuno Borges knows how to win matches, and Felix, it slams. He had the nice U.S. Open run in the fall. That was a breath of fresh air for a lot of his results over time. So I think he went round? He was out round 1 in Wimbledon, or round 2 in Wimbledon. Lost to Arnaldi round 1 at the French. That's on clay, but still, get my point. I want to give a shout out to Elias Emer. Is it Elias or Elias? I should know how to say his name. But
he was strong through qualifying.
he had a great qualifying campaign.
Yeah.
Beat some really tough opponents.
Yeah.
Good on him. This one I think is a popcorn match. Lorenzo Musetti taking on Ralph Corleone. Corleone, I think, is establishing himself as a dude on the main tour. I think that Musetti is actually kind of a horrible matchup for him in terms of, I feel like Corleone really exerts a lot of energy with him points.
Mhm.
I just don't think he has 5 sets in him.
Particularly, I think he did pick up, was it a foot injury as well?
Yeah.
In qualifying in Adelaide, so a bit of a question mark there, but no, certainly an interesting matchup, and not the only interesting matchup in this section.
I think Musetti has a nice path to go pretty deep, actually. But yes, we have Dimitrov taking on Tomas Mahach. Dimitrov lost to Corleone after beating he beat down PCB, who I think is I don't know that he makes it all year, PCB on the tour, but I don't know where we're at with Dimitrov. And we never know where we're at with Mahach. I haven't checked the score. He was down 2 breaks, so he's still got to get to Melbourne.
Yeah, so he's up a break in the second set. So he lost the first, but he's up 4-1 in the second. So
okay, there you go.
A little bit of resilience there in terms of that comeback after a pretty poor start against Tommy Paul over there in Adelaide. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting match. If you lined up all the matches across the men's and women's round ones, and you had to ask me to pick one that I thought may end in a retirement.
Yeah, that'd be good in the betting streets. Get a retirement angle.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a big opportunity for Mahach, and Tsitsipas looked good in the United Cup, didn't look as good in Adelaide. Curious to see how he goes here. Back at Grand Slam level as well.
The world needed to see Mochizuki and Tsitsipas play again, Steve. The world needed it, demanded it. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. I don't know why we have to deal with that. Yuri Leheshka taking on a qualifier. And how do you say this kid's name? Is it Guy or Gia?
Gay?
Yeah. All right. Well, I should probably know, but I don't. I don't know what to think of Leheshka right now. He retired, and I think the Frenchie is actually pretty live if Leheshka is going to be impacted physically. We have a matchup of veterans here in Jera and Wawrinka in his final Australian Open. I do not like this for Wawrinka if Jera actually is going to have some legs. I'll tell you that. But maybe the crowd backs him to a 3-set win. I don't know. That was of all the players to draw, I feel like you like it if you're Stan because Jera's been pretty poor himself for a little bit, but you don't I mean, Jera can play forever if he's fine. So that's not a great matchup in a best of 5 format.
Yeah, I don't think it's the best. And when you look at, for as well as Stan played through the United Cup, he wasn't heavily breaking serve, I think, across the course of the tournament.
No, he definitely was not. No.
So, then it becomes a little bit tougher there. If you're not breaking, you've got an opponent who's willing to, again, I think this falls into the category of the longer this match goes, the more heavily it really favors one over the other.
Taylor Fritz, I think if you're an American, Tommy Ball is your best hope, I think, actually. I think Ben Shelton has shoulder issues. Taylor Fritz has tendonitis. And I'm unsure what to think of his 2026 AL. We'll see when he gets out there. Maybe he'll be fine. The good thing is Royer is not playing well. There's another guy with bad form at the moment. Maybe, and then Capriva, Struff, I think 80%, 70% Fritz should get through both those guys. So I think he has plenty of opportunity to get to round 3 against Leheshka if he's there. But we shall see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that first round and then potentially second round as well. It's going to be we're going to know, I think, a bit about Taylor's level.
What do you think about
how the next move is going to look?
What? Okay, so Menchik headlines this portion of this section as the 16 seed. Greek Sport, man, what is going on with Talent Greek Sport, Steve? This guy is like a different. I mean, he is Jekyll and Hyde from what we saw. For what I want to say, didn't he win a title right before Wimbledon? So
didn't he beat Yannick Sinner?
Well, via retirement, right?
Well, he outlasted Yannick Sinner. It was some very competitive tennis, I think, while Yannick was.
Yeah, I just don't know what to expect. Ethan Quinn, I think, is a nice opponent if you're Greek Sport, but I believe Quinn beat Greek Sport somewhere recently at a slam.
Some other big names, though. Oh, actually, well, in terms of big names, but also in terms of next gen. Sakamoto.
Oh yeah, no. This features two popcorn matches. Sakamoto Shodar should be awesome as two young guns taking each other on. I think that I said before we hit record, this is like a fourth qualifying match. That's kind of annoying for both those guys, but good opportunity for both to play someone relatively at their level as well to get into the second round here. And it's a nice payday in the second round, Steve. I mean, getting the second round isn't exactly something you don't want to do. I'll tell you that, monetarily speaking.
The prize money for round one's pretty good.
I know. And it only gets better.
Yeah.
And then Hubie Hurkacz versus Zizou Bergs. I mean, two guys who shined at United Cup. So we should see a good level from both players here. Now, of course, they'll come out and throw duds in, but I think that's actually, it's tough to get excited for a Hubie Hurkacz match, but I do think he's kind of rekindled the spirit a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it leads, his form in the United Cup has turned that section into a more interesting section, I think, as a result.
All right. This next section features your 10-time champion and Novak Djokovic. He's taking on Pedro Martinez, who's off a title. Martinez is going to get absolutely trounced, likely, but unfortunate because I do think Pedro Martinez is healthy. And if it wasn't for playing the greatest player of all time, he actually could be pretty live to win a match here. But unfortunate to draw Novak, who will probably eat him alive. And then go ahead.
I feel, do I mention it? Novak did cut his session short yesterday due to a neck issue. So that's begun.
He's feeding the streets with disinformation already. Good opportunity for Jerry Shung.
Yep.
Against RBA, even next round against either Nakashima or Bodo Van Zandt. So, and then your Cincinnati sensation Atman, dude. I think he could lose the Italian fairly easy. I think the Italian is playing some great tennis.
Yeah. It's again some interesting matches, and I think when you look at that kind of matchup, and you look at Jadar against Sakamoto, I feel like this draw really rewards the real tennis lovers.
Oh, like that's a great way to phrase it.
And they won't even bat an eyelid. But then, like we're sitting here talking about it, like how good is it? Like, Jadar against Sakamoto. And if I said both of their names to 97% of the people who walk through the gates at Melbourne Park, they'd have no idea who I was talking about.
Well, they're about to learn. Ben Shelton, Ugo Humbert, man, I think Ben Shelton is on upset watch. Unless his shoulder miraculously is better. I don't know what to think of Ben Shelton right now.
It's a tricky one because really this whole section hinges on him. It feels like.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's definitely the headliner. I mean, if you're Ugo Humbert and you beat Ben Shelton and you're not into round 4, what are you doing? Change your whole team. Yeah. There's no reason if you're like, as much as I like Vachereau, great story, but I mean, come on. Rinky Hachikata, Manon Reno, Monfils on his farewell tour, Dane Sweeney. Yeah. Shout out to Martin Daum, who's qualifying a legend at this point. Back-to-back slams, just absolutely eating opponents alive.
So I guess with that, with the bit of uncertainty in that section, it opens up a good opportunity for someone in this next little pocket to make a little bit of a run.
It's a good point, Steve.
Who's it going to be though?
Good question.
I'd love for like the optics of it. I'd love to see Chapo make a run. Do I think it's going to happen? No. Would I like to see it? Yes.
You know who it could be is Marin Cilic.
Yep.
Temps might be too hot for Cilic. I think that's like a gift and the curse because it's going to really speed things up, but I don't know that that's great for his fitness. Casper Ruud, I question what Casper Ruud is doing. I mean, he's publicly admitting that his wife is super pregnant and he could leave Australia anytime for the birth of his kid. You live in Australia, Steve. Is it easy to get to and from Australia?
Oh, look, it takes a little bit of time. I'd imagine when you've earned, millions and millions and millions of dollars, you could probably find your way a little bit more privately. Yeah, it's hard to know with Casper. Like,
I think
with tennis, and he's played some really average tennis, and he has also played some really good golf, and he's played some really average golf. It's hard to know with him what his, where that passion kind of lies, and somewhere in the next couple of months he will pull a tournament out of nowhere, and everyone will go like, that's Casper. But it's really hard. It makes it tricky then when you look at this because Bellucci could knock him off in the first round, or
I think 100%
fourth round without dropping a set.
I think you could totally lose to Bellucci. Bellucci hasn't really shown a lot of great form either, but it would not shock me if Casper had lost to Bellucci.
Yep.
Man, it is kind of like,
it's one also that could be an interesting little surprise packet potentially if he can.
Agreed.
It looked like he was maybe struggling a little bit physically in Adelaide, but might be one that's maybe worth keeping an eye on.
I agree. Munar, I think, is a nice dark horse to take advantage of the Shelton of it all. Khachanov, Mickelson, a lot of betting movement on that match. Tough to know where we're going to get here from Khachanov. Grindfest here in O'Connell, Boston Ready. If you're a fan of the actual sport of tennis, it is going to get played in that matchup.
Yeah, and O'Connell, another one with a late wild card in that hole. Who was going to get the wild cards out of Thompson, O'Connell, Wawrinka, and Kyrgios? So nice to see him be rewarded there. Hopefully, he can kickstart his season after some up and down form over the last 12 months. But below that is what is this the? This could be the match of round one, but not.
This is comedy of the year, the twin sequel. I mean, Big Perry, the player of the year, Sabina Baez. Wow, incredible.
It's
kind of like the new Isner Schwartzman.
Yeah, it's the Ivo Karlovic duty sailor kind of performance, like Dane Sweeney in a Palka last week with Sweeney getting up on the chair to give him a hug afterwards. So look, it's going to be I do like these type of matches in terms of you get the contrast in style and there's a whole lot that kind of comes with that. And it's going to be how many aces can GMP produce, and Baez is how many times can you get the ball back in. Really, that's going to largely settle it. But yeah, some really interesting names in this little pocket too.
I thought this week we saw the best we've seen from Luciano Darderi on a hard court before eventually falling to Giron in 3. Small sample size, obviously, as he looked atrocious this fall. So it didn't really take a lot to impress on a hard court compared to what we saw this fall. But that said, I would say the stock ticker is pointing up. And Green, man, I don't even know what to think of this guy at this point. Could be a really fun match to watch. I don't really want to make a prediction.
Yeah, Green was another one who put in a large body of work late in the season at challenger level to get in to the main draw here. Now it's about whether he can produce that or find a level, near his best. He's going to get tough. He's a tough player. He's going to take a little bit of beating. So should be an interesting match there.
This is a lot of opportunity in this portion, especially if Achanov, loses. If he goes down to Mickelson
again at the Australian Open, I think last year was Mickelson got the better of him.
Yeah. Big Perry, him serving his way. I think these big serve guys are very alive to go on some fraud runs. You think of a young Ben Shelton a few years ago, not that he's not still young, but out of nowhere, he just serves his way into the fourth round. I think Nico Jarry went all the way through that same year. Jarry went from qualifying into a match with Shelton just through big serves. So yeah, interesting section there. And then we'll come to a finish here. Fonseca, a real wild card, because we don't know what his fitness is at this moment in time. Taking on someone you don't want to be unfit against in the American Spitzeri, ultimate grinder. Luke Nardi, Wu Yibing, I think, is another guy who he wrecked in qualifying and managed his fitness okay. Took one MTO at least I know of. So fitness is going to determine how far he goes. But I certainly like his matchup here to make round 2 against Nardi.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Prismich gets in as a lucky loser. I think that the sport is better for that, to get an opportunity to showcase him against Duckworth. And then another would be beat down here with Sinner taking on Hugo Gaston. I don't know how Sinner doesn't get off the court fairly quickly there.
Yeah, I think there's one third round matchup that everyone would love to see out of this pocket, and it's just about whether the Brazilian is fit enough. Really, I think through those first 2 rounds, you can make a case that he traveled on site and trained in Brisbane. He traveled to Adelaide on site and trained in Adelaide, so he has to be close. Like, you're not doing that if you're definitely going to withdraw, I wouldn't have thought. So yeah, really interesting potential in terms of then again another third round. And I feel like this is the case, with this draw, and maybe it's just the case of the men's and women's game this year compared to previous years, that I feel like we're setting up for a lot more potential, really, really interesting clashes in round 3.
Oh, totally. All right. Well, we talked round 1, men's and women's, Steve. I teased it at the top of the episode. Who is your upset pick? I'm going to go with Bellucci over Ruud. And I think that Casper Ruud is looking to get off the island.
I'll go with Jensen Brooks against Alexander Bublik.
That kills me for so many reasons. Some I can't say out loud because I want to be positive on this podcast.
I would love to be proven wrong. And that's just one of a handful, I think, that when we read through them stood out to me. And I'm just thinking, I'll give you one for the women's as well. Let me do a very, very quick scroll back through the draw. I'll go with Sasnovich to beat Paolini.
I like it. I like that. You highlighted that when we talked about it. I think that's a good one to end on, Steve. And if you've made it here, I feel like we did a good job laying out round 1, quite frankly, Steve. And you haven't subscribed yet. What are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. We're growing. I appreciate everyone who has subscribed. We've rocketed up from sub 30 to over 50. The climb is happening, and
how about we set the goal of 100 by the end of the AO?
Let's do it. Let's get crazy. We're gonna have content coming your way. We just did I feel we went a little over an hour, but we hit every round 1 match. So
and we want to hear from you guys too. So chuck it in the comments who you think might be a one upset alert as well. We can share those on the next episode. We can recap and review as well. Trying to cover off all things. It's going to be a big fortnight. You thought opening week was big. Opening week. Wait till the fortnight of tennis that we have ahead.
And I can't wait. And until next time, see you on the court.